we certainly should be striving for contentment with our fate. But that doesn't mean that we aren't displeased with the fact that others are doing wrong to others, and we can't seem to do anything about it. We start by swearing allegiance, and what actions we can add to that depends on the individual, what their means are. A lot of people talk about superiority like it's some sort of means, but it's not. It's the choices with what you have. It's, it's like, I saw something once and of the most intelligent people, at least in my country, certain people appeared on that list. And people might say that the one person was stupid. And it's like, no, this person just made decisions. And they probably went down that road because they had enough intelligence to kind of convince themselves to a degree that other people might not have been able to convince themselves. And the same thing goes with wealth, our bodily prowess, our popular people. Before the Battle of Siffin, Amr bin Yathr and Malik Ashtar were the right-hand men of Ali. Amr died that day, and Malik was murdered at another time. Muawiyah, when he was met with a certain success, of having poisoned Malik through the emissary that hid poison in with honey. Thank God for that, as if, honey was an army of God. And see, you can't look at somebody saying a phrase that sounds pious or whatever. And Islam doesn't do that sort of assassinations. There's fights, but we're not poisoners. And we can't justify things because somebody claimed or actually was Muslim during the time of Prophet Muhammad. Those with the qualities to organize and facilitate an administration, they are such as, those sort of people will have those qualities. Now, some people need to develop in categories. It's not like there's some sort of, some things come easier to people than others because of, you can totally explain that on, just this body and the situation that this body was put in, enabled them to make those choices. And the greatest bravery is to have more say over your actions than your impulses lead you to do. And if you're dismissive, you should know who you were dismissive towards. And if you do wrong to people, one should know. An important aspect of the Islamic State is that the head of state doesn't treat offenses against him as if they were different than if they were treated against other people. And same thing goes with the governors and that sort of stuff. In fact, if anything, they're more lenient. At the very least, to be sure that they're doing the right thing, because again, they're not supposed to stretch things further. Their point is peace and security. And I know it's right wing and all. People don't know what right wing is, but it's for the freedom of the people. Islam sets forth a constitution that protects the religious minorities, the ethnic minorities, whatever. There's no higher position laid upon people by means of prejudice and stuff like this. But the state doesn't. Its duty actually is to encourage all of Islamic law, but Islamic law itself doesn't allow the punishment for various things. And some people, of course, they don't have they don't have the ability to be guided, because either they lack intelligence, or they lack well, people don't use their intelligence, and then they're not guided in the verb form. But I mean, some people, they don't have the free time or the company choices available to them, or some other such things. And the other creations, they're a witness to our worship, they're a witness to other things. But it's important to not make all our acts of worship as a public thing. You go to a place like this, it's been dedicated only to the worship of Allah, but according to those terms, people are fully modest. They're, people are washed up to perform the prayer when it occurs. No musical instruments, no combing the hair, no picking the skin or teeth, or various things that are the conditions for the masajid. But then you also pray otherwise. You worship otherwise than just stepping in a building. Because you're not religious even if you do pray 5 times a day in a mosque, as you're going to call it in English. And we need to be people who speak out about what is wrong, not one of these, it's not popular to say something. It's like, see, that's why it takes place. It's because people don't say anything. And people are even proud of doing of the worst of things. And one of the we should say all sorts of good things. And by saying those things, it brings about a change in us. It provokes us to change it, because of course of the worst things is to be one of those going around and like some of these preachers that they'll speak against one type of thing, but they'll do something else in that category. That's more likely to be the thing. It's like, I'll speak against this drug, but I'll use this drug on my own, right? Or they speak against the gays, but they're cheating on their wife. See, that's not the thing. They should, if anything, they should say something against that sort of stuff, so that they themselves can. I gotta quit because I'm and people. But who knows what people are now. You can't say, oh, well, they did something in the past. It's like, well, yeah, but now they're kind of trying to keep encourage other people to stay away from such things. And it's the duty of the Islamic State, if not the individual, when there is unintended killing. Now, unintended killing isn't done, it's not really a death penalty thing. Now, if you intend to commit a major crime and end up killing somebody in the process, I sort of see how felony murder comes down as it is, because you intended to rob or something else serious, and people end up killing people in the process, and it was like, oh, you can't charge people with felony murder. It's like, you kind of can if their intention was to, there's two ways that Prophet Muhammad spoke about things in terms of how we're going to be judged. Is what is the first thing we're going to be judged about? Of course, obviously, we're going to be judged about our. So, some narrations make that point and say it's the salah, and so the orisons, those making contact prayers. Well, from that you have the monotheism and all the other deeds mentioned in there. It's not like some psychopathic prayer where you just follow your own desires and just say what you're going to say, or do what you want to do without any guidance or whatever. You face a particular direction, you recite certain things, and there's spaces where you can, in the prayer, where there's a variety, where there's per se a rule, and then you can say what you want in supplication or something. But another way that this is put, from the words of Prophet Muhammad, is that we're going to be initially judged for our shedding of blood. And I am of the opinion that this includes our eating. So the unlawfully killing of animals, like one of the things we do in the West, it started to gain popularity under the NSDAP, and they knew that it caused more pain and fear and all that, but they didn't like it. It looked nicer when you drugged animals to death or you stunned them to death. And it's like electrocution and drugging is of the most horrible ways to die. I guess slow burning is worse, but yeah. But you need to be very careful about the shedding of blood, and that includes what you say. If you're one of these people talking about the, lending word to the murderers, you promote your political side or candidate and justify everything they're doing, because it's like, especially if you voted for them, you have the right to criticize them. Thank you very much. Or if you voted for someone against them, or just for someone else, then you have the right to say, hey, this is not, I voted otherwise for this reason or something. But you got to be careful of your influence. If you're favoring these depopulationist agendas, then the people that these people end up killing, that's, sort of on you. Everybody's going to go through hardship, but we need to remember not to be on hardship for itself. If you're going to accomplish the same thing, you should do it the easier way. And by same thing, sometimes, this gets done, but this gets done well. Okay, then get it done well. Throw in the extra stitch. It's like I heard the other year there was going to be a clothing shortage, and I think they have thinned fabric and clothing itself. It started with fabric, and now it seems to be clothing itself. And, because they don't want you to have a pair of socks that last, 70 washes in the washer. No, that's not what they so they've cut back on thread count on stuff. And one of the things about a Muslim versus a non-Muslim is to try to have the upper hand. Now, in everything, but that doesn't mean that you're rude. A lot of people, can't tell the difference. And whoever has the right, they have the right. It's not as we see in the Talmud or something like that, where, you find out somebody's not thing, and then you automatically assume that they've turned their back on God, because that's what Guya means, or Gawim, Goyim is where that word comes from. It became Goyim. If someone has a right, they have a right. And it's not for the government to use their positions to get rich. The last president in my country, I don't know if he's going to be elected again by the time this video is out, or what the deal is going to be with that, but that individual, he actually lost a good sixth of his wealth because he was president, and they turned against him with the media and stuff because he didn't go along with some agendas or whatever the case is. He wasn't perfect, and there's certainly things you can criticize Islamically about his rule. And I don't mean stuff that happened under him that he wasn't a part of, because, American presidents aren't dictators, at least not while I'm making this video. They require the support of other people. But, yeah, it's not for them to, for example, as heads of state, you can, gifts sometimes go across, but it really sort of becomes the property of the state, because this was received because they were in that position. And it's better for those in authority to be alone than to be constantly surrounded by people and, thus be so influenced. And one station of religion, of course, is that we need to have, absolutely, is the concept that the religion is obligation. Obligation to do things, obligation to not do things. And we need to be open and not narrow about things. And we need to make business itself smooth and clear what is right and wrong about it. There's certain risk involved in business, that's fine, but the risk shouldn't be bank interest or selling things based on what they're not. You know what I mean? It should be what it is and what it's done in the past, rather than perspective about the future. Like if an animal's pregnant, selling it with the price of the baby, that's not what you should do. If they actually do give birth, then you can sell it as a package or something. But so all the announcements are made, and then whether the company makes money or not, the stocks go up or down accordingly. That means that the stocks aren't sound Islamically. And so we should know that since it's not exactly parts of a company, it's like right now, as I'm recording this, there's all sorts of stuff. It's the 18th of the second month of 1445, right, when I'm recording this, by the way. And bad announcement after bad announcement. For almost a year, things go up, or they just don't go down to anywhere near what they should be. biggest stock market bubble ever. I mean numbers and percentages. Percentages is more the thing. And people should have salaries in a way that they are not tempted. One of the things that they tried to set up in some Muslim majority countries that I wouldn't call them, oh, it's a Muslim country. It's like, yeah, it's a country where every country in a way is a Muslim country, but, it's not entirely an Islamic government. But they did have the aspect that if you worked somewhere, you would end up getting the wage for you and your family, or you didn't have to have a family. That was it. That was it, and that's how the thing should be. It should be, and sort of to a degree, that's how it was in the 60s, because even back before the Civil Rights Act, you could have a black man or somebody who we would call black, because most of them, I don't think scientifically that's the appropriate thing to say, from a couple different angles, but could work and support his family. Nowadays, you have three people working for the relative wage of what people earned back in the 60s, and it took between 1965 and 2016 in my country, the average wage went up $1 a week, and you know how much prices went up. You don't have to be around to know that. But overall, the point narrows down. How do we figure out right and wrong? We turn to the revelation, we turn to the inspiration. And in that case, in the case of this day and age, that's Al-Quran, and that's what the Prophet actually taught, the examples that he actually gave. And, there's reference to referring things to those of knowledge amongst you and that sort of stuff. And that's what A'imma represents, at the very least, is the people who said, we're going to go directly to the sources and we're going to withhold any judgment until we're certain about this is what was taught. And they were taught quite extensively in terms of some of these things. And I, just like through the Sunni and Sufi strains. Now, the Sufis don't, none of these groups historically go back as far as people tend to say they go, but they all seem to have obviously forgot some things, but there was the idea that some stuff was being passed on, and there were people that were righteous predecessors. Salaf as-Salih. In the actual sense, not just, the best generations were the generation that knew Muhammad, and then after that, and then after that, and then after that. And, after that, I'm not sure it broke down quite like that, but, war in the Islamic vision is to install peace, to bring wholeness. It's not, I don't have the reference on the top of my head, but both the Shia and the Sunni agree that cursed be those who fight. The curse of Allah. This is a Hadith Qudsi, meaning that it said, that Muhammad said, that Allah said. So revelation wasn't entire. There was more revelation than just the Quran itself. There's words used in the prayer and some other stuff. But Allah's curse is upon those who fight to extend borders, those who fight to capture the spoils of wars, those who fight to gain slaves, those who fight to force conversions. Now, people may see what goes on and be converted, but they're not forced into it in any way, shape, or form. There may be prisoners of war. They are treated better than corporate employees. I mean, I guess there might be some corporations that treat their employees better than that, but not like Islam says. And you got, obviously, goods and not just weapons are going to be captured when an enemy that is aggressed or oppressed has been dealt with, and territory is going to be had. But none of those things are allowed to be a reason for going to war. So it's not going to make the difference if somebody cuts down their palm trees or burns their orchard or defaces the nice buildings in town or something like this. This makes no difference. In fact, this actually gives more of a reason to fight the wrongdoers, because they're destroying history, the livelihood. And it's not about hate. You can say, there's a verse in the Quran, I don't remember where it's, Surah 3 or something like that. Here you are loving them, but they don't love you like you, something like that. You love the enemies because you want them to step away from what is wrong, the wrong beliefs, the wrong actions. You want to withhold them, because obviously sometimes you can not be part of their being afflicted, and that's one of the things that people look at. If you don't love your enemies, then you might look at it and be like, well, they're not directly affecting me, so I'm going to stay out of it for the time being. One, things can come upon you, so, that can be a motivation, but, that's why somebody's living as a rule, unless you're straight up fighting them or there's a war or something like that, you generally don't curse people. You make things conditional. You bind, you pray that somebody, save them from unlawful receiving and giving of some variety, right? Usually it's wealth itself. We need to be such an individual that, we need to step away from our mere desires, mere emotions, mere things that go through our head, and work on our own beliefs. And remember, anything worth doing, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful. And that's, of course, a way in which we can start our letters. And except for the dusk prayer, for reasons of one shouldn't have any secular talk or whatever after the prayer, and just in general just head home and go to bed or go off to sleep or something like this after the dusk prayer is said. All the other prayers should be done as early as one can. One wakes up and washes up, and if it's past the crack of dawn, by the crack of dawn I don't mean sunrise, I mean the horizontal lines of twilight start to come in, you say your prayer. And when you lead a prayer, you do it in a way that the weaker people can stand along with you. So, when it comes to 5 obliged prayers, don't make your prayers longer than 10 minutes or something like that, or maybe you recite a 5-minute chapter or less, but in general it's even shorter than that. You can probably get all the required prayers done in about 17 minutes. Some people, if you want to take a half hour, that should be fine. If you're leading a congregation somewhere. and you might know the circumstances or whatnot, but yeah, you want to make things easy enough for people to follow. And the narrations about, pray with them as far as they're going to pray, and then you go home and it's like you pray all night. If you pray that and pray the dawn prayer in the congregation, the thing about that is it becomes very obvious that this didn't include the voluntary night prayers. So the people so you have to spend more. Yes, there's more merit in Ramadan, but you have to spend an extra hour or so to pray all the Taraweeh, and then you get the merit as if they didn't pray Taraweeh. And yeah, that doesn't make any sense. You get the merit of praying all night if they don't pray Taraweeh, but if they do pray Taraweeh, you have to, stay much longer to get that same merit. So there's context of that sort of thing. There are some that are going to be pleased according to your displeasure, and you're going to be displeased according to your pleasure. And in response to your pleasure. And don't be like that your emotions depend on the emotions of others, especially to the point of it being a contrary thing. وَإِنِّي خِفْتُ مَوَالِيَ مِنْ وَرَائِي وَكَانَتِ امْرَأَتِي عَاقِرًا فَهَبْ لِي مِنْ لَدُنْكَ وَلِيًّا يَرِثُنِي وَيَرِثُ مِنْ آلِ يَعْقُوبَ وَاجْعَلْهُ رَبِّ رَضِيًّا. And in other cases too, a prophet wanted an heir, and they were granted an heir as they were those who prayed for it. وَوَارِثُ سُلَيْمَانُ دَاوُدَ وَقَالَ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ عُلِمْنَا مَنطِقَ الطَّيْرِ وَأُوتِينَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ إِنَّ هَذَا لَهُوَ الْفَضْلُ الْمُبِينُ. And sometimes this is done in a way that makes clear the fact that they're inherited in a religious sense as well. But a person can say that the succession should be on a religious basis in multiple ways. People look at various things and how people please one party or another, but our rulers should be chosen upon their character. And even Abu Bakr and Umar and they had addressed this idea where people thought, well, maybe you should have your kid succeed you, but they knew that wasn't right, so they didn't push for their children to be successors. It wasn't to the Muawiyah that became the thing. Elsewhere, we have that Ali reminded the people that one's lineage and who you knew is not how you chose. That doesn't justify somebody being a leader. There's more to it than that. And the inheritance of Muhammad via what the Quran teaches is the Shia position. And the Sunni position tends to be that anything Muhammad left behind was taken away from those who would have been his heirs, his daughter and such. But we are reminded that wasn't one of the prophets that prophethood itself was inherited. The teachings were inherited. He had some belongings that would have been passed on. There was a share of control of some land that would have been passed on. And it's interesting that if all the traditions come through Abu Bakr, nobody else seems to have stated that they remembered it, when Muhammad wasn't one to hide teachings. He might step aside and personally advise someone, whether it's in the sight of others or out of the sight of others. He wasn't one to hide guidance and say this was for one person or another. That's one issue that occurs with some of the Sufi orders, and we need to step away from that, is this idea that there was like some secret side extra tradition, and that's not really the thing.